It was cold out, January 2019, as one might expect. My wife and I walked into the OBGYN office for our 12-week appointment to see how things were doing. We shared the waiting room with other soon-to-be parents, some that were holding their newborn and excited to share them with the staff that had followed them along their 9-month journey. Sure, the others were nervous, but there was no telling if they felt the way we did. We married in October of 2017 and were excited to get to starting our family shortly after. Only it didn't work out as simple for us as we thought it would. My wife, the amazing woman she is, carried the weight of 2 miscarriages on our journey to parenthood. And as much of a struggle as it was for me, I can't imagine the pain she went through. So as we sat there in anxious silence in that 12-week appointment, we were begging that there would be a heartbeat when they booted up the ultrasound. Waiting room times are long, but it felt like ages as we sat there unsure of what would happen when we walked down the hall. The ultrasound tech called our name, and after more waiting for the setup, I could see that my wife was crumbling with anxiety. Her eyes were welling up, and I sensed a shakiness in her hands. I did my best to comfort her as the technician chatted on without knowing why we might be so nervous. As the screen lit up and showed what was going on inside, I leaned closer to pick out any sign of life. And sure enough, there it was. A jumping gummy bear. The baby that was going to make us happy parents was not only tracking the growth schedule, they were bouncing around inside my wife as if to say, "Relax, Mom and Dad. I'm still here, and I'm fine." An unconfirmed pregnancy has a 31% chance of miscarriage after implantation, nearly 1 in 3 pregnancies. A medical confirmed pregnancy has between a 10 and 20% chance of miscarriage, but after 12 weeks it goes down to less than 4%. Needless to say, we were emotional in a good way with our visit, and finally ready to share the news with close family. It had been a full year of us trying, and there are many that it takes longer for. We knew that we were fortunate to be where we were, and in another 6 months, we welcomed the perfect little girl into this world. The purpose of this story is twofold. 1, for any struggling mom-to-be or couple out there, know that miscarriage is a lot more common than you might imagine. We've just been conditioned to almost feel that there's something wrong with you if it happens. But don't carry that weight alone or blame yourself. Talk to someone about what you're going through and don't give up. And 2, this experience grounded my wife and me and turned us into determined parents. My wife has been extremely fortunate to be able to work from home and be an at-home mom to our daughter. On the other hand, I've recognized that I need to gain control over my time and where it's dedicated to so that I can spend it with my family. It hit me hard. I suddenly really hated traveling for work, and I don't use that word lightly. I mean, it filled me with absolute animosity. I couldn't stand sitting at the office and felt dizzy under the buzzing lights. I'm still doing that today, but now I've got a goal. Get out as fast as I can, which is what led me to the FIRE movement. Financial independence, retire early. I'd heard of it long before, and I knew I was going to retire early. I just assumed it was going to be hitting big in some way. A rock star, an inventor of some sort, a Wall Street sleuth. It didn't matter in my early 20s because I was just going to go with the wind. I was going to figure it all out one day, but I didn't need to know right away. I wish I had just buckled down and researched it more earlier on. But now I had the push to really determine the how of getting out as fast as I can. Financial independence means not being confined by your money, rather, being freed by it. If you didn't have any bills to pay today and everything you needed was accessible, you'd be financially independent. But that's a perfect world. In this world, you need to gain control over your debts and invest in retirement accounts and other investment accounts to find financial independence. This sounds impossible to early 20s me, but it's so much easier than Wall Street makes it look. As of this Valentine's Day 2021, we are debt-free aside from our house, which is debt-free to most in this community. Without being too specific, we were sitting on between $50,000 and $75,000 in debt. Hitting debt-free is one of the first major milestones in becoming FIRE. What held us back for so long was the endless cycle of paying minimums on all of our credit cards, student loans, and car payments. Once we threw all of 2019's tax return at one of our cars, we were blown away by the relief of not having that payment anymore. Then we hit a credit card, and we were hooked. We stopped buying meaningless Amazon purchases and canceled our Prime. We closed out my wife's car, then mine, then our credit card and the rest of our student loans. We dropped our car insurance down to the state minimum, and with my wife working from home, we sold my car and went down to one. We paid off our daughter's delivery bills. We got out of our leases with Sprint and paid down our phones. Then we abandoned Sprint for a much cheaper service with no difference in quality. On Valentine's Day, I threw that second stimulus at our lawnmower we've been paying off for 3 years now. And all we had in our banks was checking and savings. No credit card bills, no loans, only our mortgage. We became financial monks, if you will, and meditated on every dollar, which sounds terribly consumeristic, but it's quite the opposite. We measure every purchase and the value it brings before executing it. In parallel to paying off all this debt, I began maxing out my 401k and IRA. We started an IRA for my wife and jumped in on index funds, ETFs, and even crypto. I'll explain what all that means in later episodes. I went from saving 3% of my pre-tax income toward retirement to saving 39%. My wife's income is essentially all dedicated to investing in emergency cushion funding. And we're looking for any way we can drive that percentage higher. We learned that the name of the game is to find anywhere possible to cut costs so that you can pump up your contributions to the future. So we found that the FIRE movement is all about calculating how much money you need in a year to take care of your essentials, emergencies, and the leisures you enjoy, and taking that number to calculate how much you should contribute to your investment accounts so that eventually they can be your auto money generating machine that funds your living expenses. All this with an age in mind and when you want to retire. There's a lot of math involved, but many people have already done the legwork for us, so it will be easy enough to walk through in a future episode. But today I ask, what is your reason for wanting to retire early? What does early retirement look like for you? Old industry mindset will try to convince you that you're going to be too bored to retire early, but you've got hobbies and places you want to see in this world, right? My wife and I see an early retirement that consists of us homesteading with our daughter, exploring creative endeavors, and periodically traveling to wine and cheese-making regions of the world. I've got books to read, music to listen to, movies to watch, trails to hike, stars to gaze at, and much more. I promise you, when I retire, I won't be bored. All this to say that I always knew that I had the desire to retire early. But when my daughter came into this world, I knew that I needed to pursue the notion with much more intent. And I'm hoping that our journey teaches you something along the way. Thanks for listening to this first episode of Frugal Noodle. Make sure to follow the podcast so you can keep up on episodes. Make sure to follow on TikTok and Instagram. The music in this episode is produced by CARBS. Links to those are down in the show notes. And on the next episode, we're going to be getting into some of that math that I was talking about earlier. I'll introduce you to the 4% rule and exactly what it means and how to calculate what that looks like for you so that you can contribute to your future today. Thank you.